Okay, there we go. So I love words. Do you like words? Anyone like words around here? Yeah. I got words that I love. I'll give you one of my favorites. Vicissitudes. Oh, what a word. Forget what it means. No, I know it. It means the ups and downs of life, the challenges and just the ups and downs. I love vicissitudes. I love the way it rolls out, Try it. Vicissitudes. I mean, it's so great. I got another one for you. Oh, I love this word. Let me know if you love it. Quintessential. I mean, don't you love that word? You got to love quintessential. It is it means the ultimate. And then there are some words that it's not the meaning so much, it's just the sound. I love the way the word linoleum rolls out. Do you love linoleum? I mean, linoleum, you don't know what it is. In the 50s and 60s, floors with that plastic ugly linoleum. I don't care if it was ugly. It rolls out. It's linoleum. Oh, come to love that word, But there are some words that are more important. And there's one that I would like to introduce you to today. And it's a very important word in Chasidic spirituality. And it's called Devakut. Can we say that word together? Try it. Devakut. Devakut. It means to cleave. To cleave. And I'm going to give you a real-life illustration of what it means, and then I'm going to ask Ken to come up and read just a paragraph from the Baal Shem Tov where he talks about cleaving. So I'll tell you the real-life example. We all have memories from when we were little kids, and some of our memories can go way back. I mean, I remember things when I was like 3, but I have one from when I was 5. And the memory is this. We lived in Merrick, Long Island, and we weren't far from a beach called Jones Beach. Maybe you've heard of it before. And my dad and my mom too, but I remember specifically this time as my dad, we went to Jones Beach together, and we were in the surf, and we were up to his neck in the Atlantic Ocean, in the water. And I remember holding tight onto him. To this day, I can remember the sensation of his warm, wet skin of his back and me holding on. That's a picture of Devakut, clinging. I was clinging on to Dad. And I remember the emotions. I was mildly nervous because we were up to his neck and the ocean is bobbing, but just a little bit because I trusted Dad and I knew that I would be okay, and I clung to him, and that is the idea of Devakut. Now, the Baal Shem Tov, of course, the founder of Hasidism, he wrote about Devakut, and I'm going to ask Ken if you would come up. Ken, what I'll do is you got a thing. Okay, good. So if you read that one paragraph for us.
You got to. Before his death, he called me to him and said to me, "My child, always remember that God is with you. Never let this thought out of your mind. Go deeper and deeper into every hour and every minute in every place. These words of his are still fixed in my heart and engraved in my mind. And after my father's death, I always went off alone in seclusion, in forests and fields, to strengthen his holy thought in my mind, that the glory of the Holy One, blessed be he, fills all the earth, and that he is actually with me."
Thank you, Ken. That he's actually with me. What the Baal Shem Tov, what the Belsh is talking about, is cleaving to God, and from that cleaving comes an awareness of deep things that are wonderful and life-giving. So the Hasidic value here, Devakut, is the discipline and the experience of cleaving to God. And this really is, for us as a Messianic Jewish community, a very important concept, because we believe that we can cleave to the living God. And we find this concept all through the Torah and all through the entire Bible. For example, let's just consider for a moment the passages that we read today. So what we read in our Torah portion is how we bring an offering and we confess that we were a wandering Aramean, and we would God rescued us and brought us to this land, and here we are, and I'm able to give this gift. And all of that, that whole exercise of confessing the truth of our history and how it fits and what God has done, all facilitates, what's the word in Hebrew? Devakut, cleaving. Yeah, the Haftorah also. What's the Haftorah about? Dave explained it to us so well today, that the Haftorah, one of the passages of consolation that we read from the book of Isaiah, that it's all about an awareness that one day the nations will come to the God of Israel and they will cleave to him. It's really about cleaving. And in our Besorah portion too, we have the concept, cleaving starts with believing. And Rav Shaul, in this passage, the Apostle Paul, gives his readers reasons for believing in Yeshua, specifically the resurrection of Yeshua as a historical fact. It's something that you could ask the majority of the 500 people who experienced it. It wasn't a Baba Meiser, that's Yiddish for old wives' tale. It wasn't that. It wasn't a myth in the silly sense of the word myth. It was a historical reality. And cleaving comes from believing, but believing starts with truth. It's always that way. Truth is the bottom line. Truth leads to believing, and believing to cleaving. Now, the big question we have is, how do you cleave to God given all the distractions and challenges of life? Because that's the question. We can say, we can affirm, yes, it's a great thing, Devakut, I love it, great idea, but I have no idea how to do it. And so I want to talk a little bit about that with you today. Okay? Now, cleaving begins with truth, but very quickly that truth takes us to a profound, specific truth. And that is that awareness of God, awareness that God is present with you. Not just in an abstract sense of with an ancient people that we are part of, although the corporate sense of being together is a critically important aspect, and we emphasize that. But it's not just that, friends. Cleaving to God means cleaving to the one who is with you. And that's what we need to explore a little bit. You see, we tend to think that God's awareness of you and you and you and me is principally he's the moral judge who's making a list and checking it twice and finding out who's naughty or nice. Okay, now that's a bit trite, but the point I'm making is that we tend to think of him almost exclusively as a moral judge who's evaluating us, and if we're good, then he'll smile. But I want to suggest to you that God is interested in you as you, and he's interested in the things you care about. Maybe you care about art and painting pictures. God is interested in you doing your art, not evaluating it, just interested in you. He's interested in you and things that you like and things that you struggle with. And he's interested in you, in how you relate to other people, not just as your judge, but also as someone who just is interested because you're interested. It's maybe a little difficult to get this truth across because religion tends to be so oriented toward God as the one who's only concerned or principally concerned about teshuvah. But what did Dave tell us today so accurately? He said there are seven haftarot of consolation, more emphasis on consolation and his being interested in us and making sure that we're comforted and making sure that we know that he's aware of us, not just corporately, although that is the emphasis in Isaiah certainly, but also individually. It's really important. You see, cleaving to God is a deeply personal reality which comes from an awareness of his presence with us. One way he shows his interest, and one way that we can be reminded of his personal involvement with us is Get ready for this. It's coming, okay? He sends his angels to be with us. Now, I'm always encouraged by Diane's Thursday meditations, and I know many of you are too, and she's so articulate and brings so much good truth. And yesterday, or the day before yesterday, I should say, it was about angels. I thought that's cool because I had written this sermon before that, but it just fits so naturally. So I want to talk with you about angels. First of all, as Jews, we wonder, are angels real? And why do I say that? It's because in our tradition, we may think that really it's not an important subject. But I want to suggest to you that it is more important than contemporary Jews may realize. Contemporary Jews may think, well, that's for people of other religious traditions, it's not us. Not true. Not true. Let me give you an example that's relevant to us every Shabbat, Friday evening. And that is, the song Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet. Malachei, angels. What is Shalom Aleichem about? Well, the history is that in the 17th century, in Tzfat, in northern Israel, also called Safed at times, but Tzfat, and that was the home of mystical Judaism in northern Israel. And the idea that was taught among the community in Tzfat is that Shalom Aleichem welcomes God to send his angels to walk home with us to Shabbat dinner. An indication that he's going to protect us and we're going to make it home for Shabbat dinner and have a great Shabbat. And so the angel, not just caring for all Israel globally and throughout time, it's you coming home from work for Shabbat. And the angel's with you. And so we sing the song. And it's an indication, again, every week, that the concept of angels who are personally present is very much part of our tradition, but it's been bleached out in modern times because of the tendency to secularism and various other things which we'll talk about. So the concept of angels as being those who God sends to remind of his personal presence, and when we get that inside of us, it can evoke the big wow and the sense of Devakut. I'm walking with God, in this case through his emissaries. Angels are not divine, they're created beings. But notice what it says in the book of Hebrews, chapter 1 and verse 4, about angels. And this is a passage that compares Yeshua to the angels, and Yeshua is vastly greater than the angels. It says this, are not the angels ministering spirits sent to serve those who will inherit salvation? And it's a rhetorical question. The idea is, yes, that's exactly what they are. They're sent to you and to me. Now, I've been greatly helped by a writer. She's actually, I suppose what you'd say of her, she's kind of a mystic. But mystic doesn't quite do her justice, I think. The term it's not broad-ranging enough in terms of what she's all about. Her name is Lorna Byrne, B-Y-R-N-E, and she wrote a book called Angels in My Hair, and there's a reason for the title. And a friend, Howard Storm, recommended it to me and said, you should read this book. It's really got something to teach us. So I read it, and then I read it again. And I read it from cover to cover again, and again, and again, and again. No joke, I've read it at least that many times. Why? Because I was confronted with the reality that I hadn't thought much about before. The role of angels in my life and in your life, again, and we put it within the framework of Devakut, facilitating my sense of cleaving to God. And so that's why I read it so often, so many times, and I had to read it because my mind wasn't ready for the things she was saying. Now, I'll say parenthetically, anybody could write a book, and my mind works this way. When someone makes extraordinary claims, my tendency, and I'm not ashamed of this, I'm actually glad about it, I always ask, is the person a liar? Do they seem to be a liar? Or do they seem to be mentally off? And if they're a liar, that is, they're telling untruths to sell books, then I don't want to have anything to do with it. And if they seem to be emotionally unbalanced, They may be fine people, but they tell me that angels are following her all over the place, and she relates to them and talks to them, and they're present, that each of us have angels that are part of our lives. If that person doesn't have the mental capacity to tell the truth, not that they're lying, but they're just deceived, then, I can be sympathetic, but I'm not going to pay attention. But in Lorna's case, I came to the conclusion she is certainly not a liar. I don't believe it. And on top of that, I really think that she is a very well put together person who knows how to live life. She's raised 3 children. She took care of a husband who died in his mid-40s and did it with... she's so reflective about her own sorrow and grief and mixed feelings about things that you just get the feeling you're dealing with a real human being. Anyhow, I highly recommend the book because she talks about unemployed angels. You ever hear a phrase like this before? Unemployed angels. So what she says is that angels are sent to help us. And she says, but there are millions of them, and many people are oblivious and never ask for any help from angels. Now, she makes a big distinction. You do not pray to angels. She's emphatic about it in all of her books. I've read 3 of the others as well, and she's emphatic on that point. Only God receives our prayer. We are to pray only to Hashem. And from a Messianic Jewish standpoint, our prayer is to Avinu Malkeinu, our Father in heaven. Is it wrong to pray to Yeshua? No, but the major emphasis in the Bible is to address our heavenly Abba, Avinu Malkeinu, the God of Israel, as our Father. And then, of course, it's certainly, we have a relationship with Yeshua. It's not wrong to pray to him, but our prayers principally. End of parentheses. But what I'm trying to communicate is that Lorna reminds us that angels are sent to be with us, and they're happy to help us. And we need help. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But I'll tell you how I've been experimenting with this. I study flute. I'm going to tell you, trombone comes a heck of a lot easier than flute. I mean, flute you have to hold way out here. I have no idea what's going on out here. I can't see it. It's tough. And when you start an instrument seriously in your mid-60s, believe me, it's better to get start when you're 9 years old or 5 or 6, But that back then, no boys played flute. It was all girls, and that was what they did. Okay, so the point is that I have been, during my practice times, saying, angels, I could sure use a little help because I don't think my posture is exactly what it should be. Could you help me? Now, I'm not hearing voices, although I don't preclude the possibility, but that's not the way it is. It's more of a subtle impression that comes my way, which I am choosing, though I don't have absolute proof of this. It could be because my particular angels that I'm appealing to are not unemployed at that particular moment. I'm employing them. It's not prayer. It's not prayer, and maybe that's a subtle distinction that we could explore more. But the point is, be aware that you're not alone. God's special messengers are there to help you cleave to God. And we're talking about cleaving. By the way, what is that Hebrew word that starts with a D sound? Say it loud. Devakut. That's it. It means cleaving. Now, I want to explore an objection to this idea of cleaving to God every minute. And here's how it might be expressed. God made me smart enough, tough enough, strong enough to navigate life without any conscious awareness that I need his help. I'm not weak, I am strong. Now, this is an impediment because, look, God made us and he has given us gifts. And he's given us competencies, and that's great. But here's what I want to suggest. Many of us have lived long enough to know the vicissitudes of life, love that word, are such that one time you're up, but let me tell you something. Life can change on a dime, and you can find yourself down and really in need pretty easily. It borders on arrogance to strut your stuff about your own strength, your own wisdom, your own good, yet this and that and the other thing. Some of it may be true. You're blessed, you're gifted, you're smart, you're tough, you have foresight, you're experienced. Let me tell you, you need God's help, and you need Devakut. So I don't think that's the way. Sure, when things are really moving along great, you don't feel you've got the world on a string, no big problems, then we can allow ourselves the dubious luxury of saying, God, thank you very much, I can take it from here. But most of us by this point are keenly aware of our vulnerabilities, and that's not the way we are. And let me tell you, if you're a soldier stuck in Afghanistan, a Marine who's taught to be tough and self-reliant and can-do, believe me, you sense your vulnerability when the bad guys are surrounding you, as we understand all too well. So, better to learn to cleave to God every day. And here's the paradoxical thing, and I'm coming near the end here. The paradoxical thing about strength and abilities and all that is that by cleaving to God, I mean really sticking with Him tight, your competence, your abilities, your strength, your toughness, your capabilities, your maturation are not truncated or damaged by cleaving to Him. You become more the human being that God wants you to be, not less. You become stronger, tougher, more self-reliant, but self-reliant within a framework of Devakut and cleaving to Him. So, that's the way it works. And part of it is because cleaving to Him and relying on Him also brings testing, and testing makes us stronger. Okay, bottom line, human autonomy is an illusion, and we can become fully human by trusting in Him. Now, last but not least, I will close with this. Devakut, how do you get there? Well, I'm suggesting experiment with Lorna's book, see what you think. But let me give you something more concrete and more obvious. High holidays are coming. And during the high holidays, it's a real opportunity to draw close to God, to experience Devakut as we enter into a time-honored liturgy. And as we sit there, sometimes not knowing what's being said, doesn't matter. You're hearing the words, you're experiencing the corporate experience. You're back with Moses, you're back in the days of Yeshua, you're back with the Baal Shem Tov, you're back, and the corporate time reality of that seeps into your soul, and if you let yourself, you experience Devakut. And so I want to encourage you to experience Devakut. I close with David's words, where he manifests this lofty value of Devakut, of cleaving to God. And here's what King David said, and this is from Psalm 106. Hear my prayer, O God, hear my prayer. Excuse me, let me try again. Hear my cry, O God, listen to my prayer. From the ends of the earth I call to you. I call as my heart grows faint. Lead me to a rock that is higher than I. For you have been my refuge, a strong tower against my foe. I long to dwell in your tent forever, Devakut, and take refuge in the shelter of your wings. Friends, it's Devakut. Cleave to the Lord. Shabbat Shalom.